Hey guys, welcome. So it's been 6 months since we introduced our game Samurado with this devlog here. And if you're new here, all you really need to know is that this was supposed to be a 90-day challenge. And even if you don't know anything about that, stick around because you might be able to learn something from some of the mistakes that I've made along the way. I just want to talk about them here a little bit. So the idea was that my dream game Veil of Maia was going to take years to finish, and we weren't really finding the growth that we wanted on YouTube at that point yet, and we felt like we were spinning our wheels a little bit, but we didn't want to quit. So we decided to start a new project and get it published in 90 days. Real quick, and then back to Veil of Maia. Just a quick, simple little project that players could enjoy for a few hours for a few dollars. We'd make a little bit of money in the process, have a fun new devlog series out on YouTube, and most importantly to me, actually have a published game under our belt. So I was looking for that experience because, if I'm being honest, a lot of what I was trying to do, I think, was to alleviate some of the imposter syndrome that I was feeling. Because I don't have anything published under my name yet, I often battle the thought of I'm not a real game developer. And since we're counting, that devlog that I showed you was actually 45 days into this 90-day challenge, so it's actually been like 7.5 months. And again, it was supposed to just be 3 months. And I just want to be honest and just chat a little bit about the development process behind Samurado. Tell you what's going on, talk about the delays, talk about what mistakes we've made and what we're doing to improve moving forward, and just bring you guys up to speed with the whole thing. This is not a devlog, this is just kind of an honest conversation about the development process of Samurado. Game development can be a really emotional experience for a lot of developers, and I know that that's true because YouTubers love to post videos about how hard game dev is. And this is true for me as well, so here's my honest blanket statement. I feel embarrassed right now. I'm embarrassed that I set out to do this challenge on YouTube publicly. I'm embarrassed that we're so far beyond our original completion date. And I'm embarrassed because it still has a good little ways to go before it's done. And the more time that goes by, the more embarrassed I start to feel about it. So I'm making this video to kind of just face it and let you guys know what's going on, and hopefully we can all learn something in the process. So there's good news and there's bad news. The bad news is that I have finally accepted that this is not the tiny project that I thought it was, and so we're pushing the release to the summer of 2024. The good news is, obviously, we're not quitting, and since our cross-country move is done and we're settled here, we've been plowing through features for this game. I've gotten more done in the last 3 weeks than I have in the past 3 months before that. My excitement is at a peak for this game right now, and yours should be too. So go and wishlist the game. Shameless plug, right? So what happened? Why is it taking so long? Well, for one, I think that my lack of project management skills really jumped up and bit me in the ass for this project. I have learned some hard lessons from working on this game. And originally, when I wrote the script for this video, I wrote that scope creep was a big factor. But I took that out because I don't actually think that's true. What's happening has not been scope creep. There isn't a single thing that's in the game now that wasn't planned from day one. I didn't get carried away implementing all sorts of unnecessary features. It feels like scope creep, but it's not. So what is it? I have to take responsibility here and make no excuses. It's just me being not very good at knowing how long it's going to take to create certain things. And I mean fully working with polish and just all of the features and options that I want. Literally every feature that I've created for this game takes a lot longer than I originally thought it was going to. And to give you an idea of what I mean, it's almost like when I am in project management mode, I view everything almost like it's a game jam. You need to spawn in some enemy loot after you kill an enemy. Okay, great. Just instantiate something in, boom, and you're good. That's what I think in my head when I'm actually planning and writing down the bullet points for what needs to be done that week. But that's not the end of it. Not even close. There's way more nuance than that. You need to add probability in for whether or not it should spawn and get all that math figured out. It should probably be spawning from an object pool. You don't want it spawning in the walls or on top of other objects, so you need a system that's going to deal with that. And if you have an upgrade system or any kind of variability there that might affect what loot can drop or how often, then all of that needs to tie in together as well. In my head, it sounded really simple, but it ended up being much more than I thought when I was planning it. And this all sounds really obvious. That's why I feel kind of embarrassed about it. I'll give you another example from something that I finished working on very, very recently. So this one's fresh for me. I had an item on my to-do list that literally just said, create an enemy wave spawner system. Because at the time I didn't have any kind of system. I just spawned one of every enemy type every time you entered a room. And I promise you that gets stale very, very fast. So my job, which I thought would maybe take me an afternoon, was to create a system that determined what enemies should be dropped into each room, and how many and which types, etc., etc. This did not take me an afternoon. This took me a solid week, I think. And that's because there's so much more nuance than just spawn in X number of enemies when you enter a room. You have to distribute enemies in a fair way. You can't have a player walk into a room and encounter 10 new enemies that they've never seen before. You don't know what their attack patterns are, you don't know what to expect. That's not fair or fun. So suddenly I find myself developing a system where I have to track which enemy you've encountered, how many times you've encountered them, so that I can kind of drip feed in new enemies in a way that's fair and hopefully fun. And also, not every single room should just have a bunch of random enemies being plopped in. There should also be dedicated rooms like mini boss rooms, shops, healing rooms, or whatever. There can't be too many enemy types thrown at you at once. There should probably be a limit, but maybe I also want the option to have challenge rooms that break some of those usual rules and patterns for special rewards. And so suddenly what started out as this tiny little item called create enemy wave spawner system ended up becoming this behemoth task that went through multiple iterations until I was happy with it. That is what happens when you try to plan something that you didn't think through far enough. It also turns out that I'm not always the most effective communicator in making a game with my wife. And so Nikki and I have had some bumps along the process of making this game together. I don't always treat her like a coworker, I treat her like my wife. And as it turns out, when we're working on the game, we work much more productively if I treat her like a coworker. The moral of the story here is I planned to make a game in 3 months in a genre that I don't have all that much experience in, and that is coming through in the form of delays. But for those of you who are waiting for this game, here's what I can tell you. We are working very hard on it, and recently we have radically changed how we plan and how we work towards hitting our goals. I scrapped my old to-do list and made a new one from scratch because it was a bit outdated. We have a schedule with due dates for every task, and we revisit that every single week. We have a 5-minute powwow each morning to make sure that we're on the same page for our tasks for that day. And regardless of how busy YouTube keeps me, I manage to make time to work on Samurado every single workday. I very much learned through trial and error, and I have made a lot of errors with this game, and I'm a better developer now because of that. I'm also learning to dance between my role as a designer and my role as a programmer. When I have my programming hat on, my mentality can sometimes just be to get it working as quickly as possible, pump out new features constantly. But when I have my designer hat on, I need as much flexibility and as much modularity with the systems that I make as possible, and that's so that I can iterate quickly. I'm still very much finding a balance between those two roles. There is a devlog coming for Samurado. I can't exactly tell you when, but there is one coming. And I just really want to thank you guys for joining us on our journey, for commenting, for watching our content, all that good stuff. I am constantly humbled by how awesome the indie game dev community is. I really want to thank you for your patience because it will be worth the wait for this game. That's all I got for you guys. I know that this one was a little bit different. I hope you found this helpful or validating if you're struggling with your game dev journey. There is no perfect A to Z for making a game. There are always going to be bumps along the way. The important part is that you don't quit, because you cannot fail if you don't quit. Like the video if you liked. Bye. I want to give a very special thank you to all of our Hall of Fame patrons: Jakob Yondok, Christopher Nichols, Sandra Kessler, Fontaine Waite, Brainwaves to Binary, Couch, KB at Bird Tech Games, and Ian Oral, as well as our early access patrons: Ken Waite, Mason Crow, Mr. D, Liquid Egg, Alexander Prestis, Jude Greaves, Felipe Gomos dos Santos, Ober, Francesco Latamata, Bill Guo, Alon on Mars, Alex Friedman, Danny Rathliff, Neil, Ben Kerberger, Lucky Tales, Aiden Serve, Adarsh Kumar, Merler, Anastasia Shamalina, and Petter Juricek. If you choose to support us on Patreon, you can get early access to all of our YouTube videos, monthly alpha builds, and more.